Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Interact Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Rick Newman. Rick's an award-winning journalist, written for the New York Times, Yahoo Finance, and now you've branched out on your own, which I think is super awesome. And you've been using quizzes in a very cool way. So thanks for being here, but let's just jump right in. Tell us how you're using the quizzes within your journalistic work, and then we'll go from there.
Hey, Josh. So I started my own news site. It's called the Pinpoint Press. I'm the sole person running this thing and doing all the work. And I've been, I'm a puzzler. I'm a quiz person. I do all of the New York Times word games, the crossword, the news quiz, and stuff like that. And as somebody who's been a lifelong journalist, I'm very interested in the concept of the gamification of news. And I think part of the reason for that is it kind of personally interests me. But I've been a journalist since the early 1990s. So I started at a print magazine and had to survive this transition over to digital. And starting around the year 2000, it's just been constant fragmentation in the media. And just as it settles into one thing, then something new comes along, and now we've got artificial intelligence. So gamification is a thing. It's a way that people get information now, and I want to test if I can sort of grab people's interest in a new way. And the last thing I'll add is it definitely caught my attention. If you follow the business of the media, that at the New York Times, the fastest growing part of the New York Times is not news, it's not sports, it's games. And I think it's fair to say that they're getting so much revenue from games that it's probably helping subsidize the journalism they do. So all of that got my attention. I'll add one more thing. When Wordle became popular, it was just one guy. I'm sure you know this, like one guy, and I think his name was actually Jonathan Wordle or something like that. He made this game. He just made it for his wife, and it caught on and went viral. And the New York Times paid seven figures for it. I don't know if that was $1 million or 999, however you do the seven digits of the nines. But they paid a lot of money for that. So something's going on here.
No, I hear you, and it's cool to hear that that's how you came into it. I feel like most of our audience and people that have used Interact are quiz people. It's like you either enjoy quizzes on the New York Times or BuzzFeed has gotten really popular for it. There's other websites, Cosmopolitan back in the day, and it's that gamification, like you said, I think is exactly what it is, and it makes the information really nice and approachable. I think some of the ones specifically that you've done, like the Venezuela one, I just went through that before we jumped on here. It helps to make the information more accessible to me as somebody that's reading your content and learning from you. Is that, I mean, it's still early, but have you experienced that with readers where it's like, oh, this helps to break down a more complex topic?
I don't know. This is one of the reasons it's a fun experiment. And so I've only done a few of news quizzes with my news site. Before this, I did. I was experimenting. So I was at Yahoo Finance as a staff person for 12 years, and I left there last fall. That I actually got laid off. They're shrinking the news staff, and I kind of saw it coming. So it was fine. So I'm kind of an accidental entrepreneur, like a lot of people, but it's fine. And I've kind of been thinking about it for a long time. But even while I was at Yahoo Finance, I was experimenting with an economy news quiz on my sort of off the radar on my own news site. And I actually pitched it to Yahoo Finance as something they might want to develop in house. And at the time, they were actually interested. They had somebody called the chief gaming officer. And at one point, the CEO said, we're actually interested in developing games. But then when I pitched it, it was a classic corporate thing. Oh, we're very interested in it. We actually have a budget for acquiring games, but we have no budget for actually developing games in-house. So I said, well, fine, I'll just do it on my own anyway. So that was my first effort. And I don't feel like I've cracked the code. So I'll tell you some of the things some of my learnings so far, and I'd love to hear feedback from people, and I'm happy to put my email address out there. So for the first quiz, since I had to build it on my own website, which was not conducive to quizzes, I hired a guy a developer to help me just get it set up. And he had a lot of experience with quizzes. And his theory was that what draws people to quizzes, one of the things anyway that draws people to quizzes is they like quizzes that make them feel smart. In other words, they like easy quizzes. And he said he had no science behind this, but he said that's one of his theories for why why Wordle became so popular is that it's easy. It is pretty easy. I mean, most people can get the Wordle word most of the time. So you feel like I'm smart. I outsmarted the quiz. So I thought about that, and so far I've been trying a harder quiz and an easier quiz, and I've been asking people do you want a high score or do you actually want to learn something from this? Like I get comments like somebody said, "Oh, I only got 8 out of 13," and I think to myself, "Well, should I've made it easier for you to get 12 out of 13?" What do you think? I mean, do you have ideas about that? You must, right?
Yeah, it's really interesting. It kind of mirrors, and this will probably get into your body of work, but it kind of mirrors the economy. So when the economy is going up and everyone feels very optimistic and good, then they just want to feel good. They just want everything to be like, oh, I got 13 out of 13, 12 out of 13. That's popular. As the economy goes down and people feel, in your words, like better, worse off, like not better off,
Hmm.
then they start to feel like they kind of connect more with bad results. Like, oh, I only got 5 out of 10 right.
Like,
Um,
is it like this? Like, oh, everything's going wrong in my life anyway, so I might as well suck at the quiz.
Basically, yeah. Like I think it's kind of like how, you see it in the political economy, right? Like it's very unpopular for people to be like, "Oh no, things are actually fine," when people don't feel fine. And
Yeah.
it's kind of the same with the quiz. Like what people gravitate to, especially if you do like an assessment style quiz, it's like what's wrong? Like identify the problem. And
Huh.
in a good time, it's more like what's my unique strength, right? So it's like two sides of the exact same thing. And I think that also carries over to the more like knowledge test trivia style quiz where it's like, if things are worse off in the broader economy, I don't necessarily want to feel like I'm the smartest and best because I don't feel like that in my life.
Yeah. Well, so which economy would you say we have right now? A better one or a worse one? I have my own thoughts, but I don't know if I'm
in
right.
in our uh world, it is also K-shaped, just like how I see in your work. So K-shaped meaning at the top it's better than ever. The
Hmm.
results of quizzes, because what we can measure, right, is like how many people are taking quizzes, and if you have email capture turned on to help grow your email list using the quiz, how many people are subscribing. At the top, our best performers are better than ever. So we've been doing this since 2013, so we can
And
track
that
since
that
then.
corresponds or correlates with something indicating that those people are prosperous. The people who are taking those quizzes are prosperous.
It corresponds with the average value of an email subscriber for our customers has stayed pretty steady around
Hmm.
$4 since the
Okay.
beginning. And so if somebody's launching a quiz and it's getting hundreds of thousands of new email subscribers versus tens of thousands, then it's better off for our customer who is the person that's creating the quiz. So they're the small business owner. That's kind of what we
Yep.
have a pulse on, and that is better than ever. And
Hmm.
then on the opposite side, at the bottom end, it's worse than ever. So
Huh.
trying to get established, trying to get started from zero, which is, as I'm sure you know, like the vast majority of people are always at the beginning. Like the
Yeah.
beginning is 90% of people. That that market for trying to get started is the worst I've ever seen
Huh.
since 2013.
And that's through a quiz perspective, but you think that correlates to economics.
I think so because we work with small businesses, right? And there are, I think, 30 million small businesses in the United States. Maybe the number's higher now. That's
Hmm.
probably from a couple of years ago. And so I think that mirrors the broader sentiment. Obviously, it's biased towards business owners, but yeah, the outlook for people trying to get started in the business owner world is really terrible.
Huh. Well, let me tell you a couple things that have been on my mind about my experience with the quizzes so far and ask you about them.
Yeah.
I'm running, I'm doing sort of conventional journalism, but with a twist is kind of what I'm trying to do. So I have a lot of articles that are, I think they're better than what you're going to find in much of the media, but it looks like a regular article. And because it's a discrete piece of text. I mean, one of the things I'm doing, and I know many, entrepreneurs are doing, is figuring out how to use AI to improve your results. So, um, AI is so I will say AI does not write my stories for me. And what I hope is for the rest of my career, a distinguishing feature is that my stories are human powered and they sound like a human wrote them. But I use AI to fact check. I use AI to proofread, and I use it to help me with SEO. I'm using Gemini, so I'm like, Jesus, I mean, Google ought to know how to optimize your story for SEO, right? So I'm hoping I get tips there. It's hard, so I can put a discrete story, the whole thing, including if I'm using charts or images, I can put that in. I'm using Gemini, but I can put the whole thing in Gemini, and Gemini can kind of see the totality of the thing. I can't do that with a quiz. And I find the quizzes time consuming because each question, it's like each question is its own discrete piece of data or information. And then separate from that, each answer key is its own discrete. So I have not figured out how to ask AI to go through and there are a lot of typos, and I mean I find I'm personally proofreading them like 10 times, and to the point of severely diminishing returns. So is there a solution for that?
Yeah, usually what people do, especially our customers that have a lot of quizzes, is everything lives in a Google Doc to start off. So all the content of the quiz, all the questions, all the answer choices, all the results, that's where you're building the text. And
Right.
that way you can pop that into Gemini, have it proofread, put it back into a doc. And then once it's all finalized and ready to go, then it's just copy paste into the Interact platform. The interactivity that we offer, obviously you can't do with like any, you can't, yeah, you have to use a tool for it, so that's like the unique differentiator. But like just a place to put text or edit text, that's not our thing. So usually people will have everything in docs to start with and then just move it over when it's like finalized and
So
ready
I'm
to
a
go.
so I'm a noob. I'm just I mean I'll have notes in a Word file or something, but usually just typing it in. So that's the thing to do, is to get it all set it up in a Google Sheet first.
Yeah, all Google Sheet or Google Doc. That way, that text is all malleable and easy to change before you put it into the quiz format. Because the quiz format, it's a unique gamification kind of thing, but it's not as flexible as just a raw block of text would be.
Yeah, yeah. I'll ask you another question. So there are some news quizzes out there. M- my feeling is that they're not generally very good. I think the New York Times, I think their quizzes are very good, but they're polished. I mean, they have you can tell they have a whole staff that's working on that. And when I sometimes, so I'm publishing on Substack, although I do have a unique URL, so it masks the Substack, but it's a Substack platform. And I follow a lot of other people on Substack. And the reason that I ended up with your quiz is that I just searched around what's the best platform to use on Substack, and yours came up. So there were three, and I think I tried them out, and I like yours, so that's why I'm using it. But I feel like most news quizzes kind of stink. Like number one, they're not interesting. Um, they're definitely not entertaining, and they make a mistake. And I think I've seen this in some of your FAQs or something along those lines, which is they give you answers that are like right close to each other. So they're not differentiating the answers. So to my mind, there's a lot of fertile territory on news quizzes, but that's I mean, so do you think I'm right, or because I'm just my universe, my surveillance universe is 10 quizzes maybe. One of them is in the Wall Street Journal. I think the Wall Street Journal news quiz stinks. It just is kind of like meant to tell, did you read these 10 Wall Street Journal stories this week? And do you remember these like arcane details from these 10 stories? So I feel like I don't learn anything. It just seems kind of like microscopic to me. But tell me what you think about that.
Yeah, so here's my just broad opinion on quizzes across the board, because there's like news quizzes and there's like personality quizzes, there's assessments, there's all these quizzes that historically are super popular. Like, and if you get it dialed in, it is still popular. Like, they've never stopped being popular. Like, the history dates back to as long as there's history, but like all through the ages, a good quiz draws people in, engages people really like nothing else. And it's crazy how like every time a new platform pops up, the first thing that becomes popular is some version of a quiz. It's like, oh, new social platform, quizzes, new whatever,
That's
quizzes.
what
Like,
I'm trying to do. I
yeah,
want to have
every
the
single
best.
time.
I want to have the best news quiz.
Right. So the thing that I've observed, and I have been working on this for 13 years, and I have not figured out exactly how to tell somebody how to do this, other
Hmm.
than just like it seems like trial and error is how people end up being successful with this. But it's it's the relevance to the audience. Like,
Hmm.
a quiz that goes crazy is the one where it's super relevant to like the internal worlds of the audience. The audience is already mulling over and thinking about the questions that you end up asking on the quiz, and even the premise of the quiz. And so that's what I've seen over and over and over again for 13 years. Like, when it has that like emotional connection with
Hmm.
what people are already thinking about to themselves all day long, then it just works. And the basic principles, like a news quiz, right? It's not a new concept, but it's that last mile problem of
Yeah.
like, how do I connect this to what my audience is thinking about all day? And this is my greatest frustration, because like people come to us all the time like, oh, can I just like copy whatever is already there and use that? And the answer is yes, but you have to adapt it to where your audience is at right now. And
Right.
if you can do that, and I've seen, over the last couple of years, I've done a bunch of these interviews, and the ones where people have really, really cracked the code, they just know exactly what their audience is thinking, and they connect the quiz to it. And then you get the benefit of the gamification format, where it's like, oh, it's a fun format.
Yeah.
And if I was just to write another article about this topic, even if it completely resonated with my audience, it wouldn't engage people as much as the quiz. But it is that piece of like, where are people at in their mind right now, and can I connect my quiz to that, just like any other content format has to connect to that. But when you can do that and then pair it with a quiz, that's what works.
I've covered a lot of stuff in my journalism career. I mean, I covered the Pentagon for 7 or 8 years back in the 1990s. I lived in Washington. Now I'm up in the New York area, covering mostly business, but also politics. And I've covered a lot, which means that in terms of what I want my news site, the Pinpoint Press, to be, um, I have a lot to pick from, but there's a danger of picking too much. And I mean, I've only been doing this for a few months, so I'm trying to figure out the right niche. And I think, I mean, I'll just put that. And by the way, anybody who wants to reach out, my email is easy. It's rick@thepinpointpress.com, just like it sounds, all one word. Um, I think that a huge issue on a lot of people's minds now and forever is, am I getting ahead or falling behind? And there are many ramifications of that. That goes in many directions. There's clearly a political element to that, which, for my purposes, yeah, that's how you get people interested. I mean, that's what the news flow is, for better or worse. I mean, as a media critic, I think the media overcovers politics and is way too focused on one little dot on the map, which is Washington D.C. But that's where the action is, and that's where the press is. Um, and I confess that in the things that interest me are probably somewhat more arcane. And I think to myself, well, because it interests me, it should interest my audience. And I try to get, I think what's happening in Venezuela is fascinating, but I think I think most Americans were interested when it was this daring military raid, and now it's kind of a page B2 story in most people's minds. So for what it's worth, so I did that quiz on Venezuela when it was very newsy, but probably I need to just go back to pocketbook issues. I mean, this is what politicians always have to focus on to win elections, and it's you look at surveys and they say, what's the most important thing to you? It's almost always the economy or something related to the economy, and it's always my personal economy, not the what's the GDP growth rate and stuff like that. So that's probably how I need to best connect with my audience. I haven't figured
I
it out
I agree with that. I was thinking that as I was looking at your content this morning. You have the new post on the whatever you call it, the index.
yet. The better
What's
off
your name for it?
index.
Better Off Index. It's
So you're
great.
better off than you were 1 year ago. I've got the data.
Yeah, it's great branding. So Better Off Index, right? I think like what would work there is, are you better off in this economy? And then you
That's my
ask,
next quiz.
right? Yeah, I think something along those lines is what works because I like that term, pocketbook issues. That is it. Like, and as much as it's more interesting, I think, as the creator sometimes, like putting yourself as the creator to go into these issues that are in depth and really fascinating. What I end up seeing over and over again is that the quizzes that actually really work just go back to those main key issues.
Hmm.
And then the only difference is that the way that you ask questions and the things that you say at the end, that's unique to you and your research, but the issue that you're covering is exactly the same. And that has never changed.
Side issue, Josh. One of the things I've tried to do in my quizzes is make jokes,
Hmm.
um, so that people think they're going to get a serious quiz, and like there's like one of the so I usually there are usually four choices you can pick, and sometimes I'll just make one of them a joke, and it might be funny, it might not be funny. I don't know how funny I actually am. But I asked, I've got a focus group of 10 or 15 people, I have colleagues and friends and family. I'm like, hey, would you take this and tell me what you think? And my idea with the jokes is it's kind of a breadcrumb strategy, like leave little things for people to discover, so that if they get used to it, they might think to themselves, well, I wonder, I'm gonna start this quiz, and I wonder what Rick's gonna, what little surprises he's gonna have in here. A couple people told me it was too jokey, and maybe my jokes just suck and they're not funny. But they were like, somebody, one guy I trust said you should never have more than one joke per question. And I guess there were some where I made, two kind of jokey answers. And, part of my, what I'm thinking about is, so if you're taking the quiz, you can eliminate the two jokey choices, right? That's not going to be the real answer. Um, so I'm making it a little bit easier for you, for people who want the easy quiz to make them feel smart. But the feedback was dial back the jokes. I was like, oh, bummer, but I have to listen.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, right? It's like you have to listen to what the audience is saying and what they want. And it's it's this odd dichotomy between like obviously what makes you unique is unique and you can't just go to the least common denominator of how you talk and how you ask questions. But I do think it's kind of this refining process of like, okay, you attract a certain audience because of your uniqueness. Then the way you talk to them has to resonate with the way they want to be talked to, not necessarily the way that you talk. And then
Right.
you attract more of an audience and you just refine and refine and refine. And it's like at the end of the day, I was talking to somebody yesterday who's an Instagram expert, and she was saying like I have 1,000 interests, like her personally.
Yeah,
I don't share all those on Instagram because that's not what the audience wants.
right.
And there's a certain subset of what I'm interested in that the audience really wants. And that's what they call like vocation, right? Historically, it's like, what are you good at that people want? And that's the piece that you share. And I think the same is absolutely true for quizzes. I think this is why quizzes are such a challenging medium because it really requires like the best of the best across everything, like market research, audience
Yeah,
research,
yeah,
copywriting, personality infused messaging, all of it. And because it's such a confined medium, you have like 10 words of a question and 8
yeah,
words for each answer. If everything is not exactly dialed in, it just completely flops. And so I always call it like it's like the cherry on top of the content sundae.
yep,
If every other piece of content that you have is exactly dialed in
yeah,
and you already have like this wonderful engaged audience across all the other mediums, then you do a quiz and it pops off. And if you have email subscriptions turned on, it gets you a ton of email subscribers. But it's so challenging because it's like everything else has to be nearly perfect or perfect before it can go into the quiz format. Because as you were just saying, like it's such a confined space of text
yeah,
that if it's not exactly dialed in, and people, they have a bazillion options these days. They're not going to go through it unless it's just like
yeah.
everything hits exactly right.
Well, I mean, what I tell myself is I'm only good at one thing, which is writing. And if I can't do that writing in that tight space, then I shouldn't be. I should stop trying to earn a living as a writer. But I also think that when something's hard, the reward for getting it right is greater, right? Because then you've claimed some turf that it's hard, that it's easier to defend or harder for other people to try to take. I guess one other question I would have for you is where's the fertile territory in quizzes? Like where is it? What are some areas where people have not figured out the best returns? And of course, for me, I'm interested in where that might pertain to news and public information.
Yeah, so I think that the fertile territory is always the internal world of wherever you are at. So, whatever industry you're in, what's the internal world of the people who are engaging with that industry, if that makes sense. And that's been figured out and then forgotten in
And it
so many
changes,
spaces.
and
And it
everything changes
changes
too.
because the internal world changes, right? Like, what's the internal world of somebody who is reading economic content? What's that? What's that? And that's what works. Same with like, what's the internal world of somebody who's trying to get fit, somebody who's trying to get a job, somebody who's trying to buy coffee? Like, what is going on the inside? That's where the quizzes really shine because it's a one-to-one thing. Like it's just you talking to them, right? Like, and people do feel like it's you talking to them. And because it is like a fixed thing, it's not AI. They know that like, hey, Rick actually wrote this. Like, this is not me chatting with an AI
Yeah,
bot that's asking me follow-up questions, which people don't like actually, which is really interesting. They prefer if it's not changing because then they know that you actually wrote it. So what is it that people are thinking about? And like my brain lit up when you said that one thing of like everybody wants to know, am I better off, right? That's the thing they want to know. I would say pull on that thread. Like,
yeah,
what are the other things that they want to know for themselves, not in general? Like, and I think that's why the news quiz is always a struggle. And like, there's a certain audience that loves that. It's trivia, but when you're talking about like really getting great engagement on quizzes, it's actually the ones that are like, what's going on with me, that are just applied to any industry. Like I
yeah,
interviewed Velocity, who does content marketing for a division of NRG, the big energy company.
Uh-huh.
and they won an award last year for their quiz strategy using Interact. And their quiz strategy is making energy personal to people. Like one that really stood out to me was like, what's my carbon footprint? And
Mm-hmm.
so it's not, do you know the impact of your activities on the environment? It's what's my carbon footprint? And that's what people like. That's what they resonate with. And so it's like taking any topic and making it personal. And speaking of like, unfigured out territory, that's the only energy company that I've seen ever that really does quizzes well. And then they won like a prestigious award for it from the Content Marketing Institute, which is like top content
Is that a
marketing platform.
quiz? Is that a quiz of the standard variety that I'm doing, or is that an interactive type thing where you at the end you're going to get some personalized output?
It's slightly different from what you're doing because what you're doing is more of a knowledge test, right? Like out
Hmm.
of out of 10, how many of these can you get right?
Right.
That type of quiz uses personality scoring is the broad term for it, where it's basically just like, are you mostly A's, mostly B's, or mostly C's? And if you're mostly C's, then your carbon footprint is high. If you're mostly A's, then it's low. And you just give answer choices where it's like, oh, if the A answer choice is always like, oh, you're not, your carbon footprint's low, and the C answer choice is it's high, and the B is in the middle. And that type of quiz just gives you a general direction. It's not overly complicated. And actually, when it's overly complicated, it doesn't work because it's too much information for people. So that type of quiz,
Yeah. Well, I mean,
it,
if you make it even more complicated, you need. I mean, some people do this well, but it is complicated. You have back end,
yeah,
um, some kind of programming there, right? That personalized.
yeah.
So that's not what you're talking about.
No, and that type of quiz works well if you have customers and you send them a quiz and you're trying to like basically automate part of your business. So
Yeah.
instead of like having to interview them one on one, you just have them take your quiz. But it does not work for like customer acquisition, like
So in your
marketing content on the internet.
among your quiz choices, I forget the type that I chose, but it's different from what is the type that you're describing with the energy company? What?
That's a personality type quiz. So
Okay.
again, like it's all inner world stuff. So personality as a very broad term that could be like, what's your carbon footprint? What career is right for you? What's the right strategy for you to get fit? Like those are
Yeah.
all technically personality quizzes because it has to do with like you as a person.
Yeah. Okay. And where do you see AI taking the quiz business?
So far, it's just a helpful companion for whittling down the content. Like, here's all my questions. Can you make this more concise for me or make it more, simple for people to read, that kind of stuff? That's the only place where it's really been effective. As far as like an AI built into a quiz where it's like, oh, you answer some questions and then the AI gives you an output. People don't like that so far. We'll see if sentiment changes. In the future. But right now, what it's helped people do, and this is like a big change that we've seen in the last few years, and you're an outlier because you're a writer, but like most people only had one quiz prior to AI, and that quiz usually would take 3 months up to a year to construct that quiz. Now,
Hmm.
what we're seeing is people doing, 3, 4 quizzes every year. And as their audience has new interests and new preferences and whatnot, then they are able to adapt to that and use quizzes as just like another format, right? You got like written content, you got video, and now you got quiz.
Hmm. I'll tell you one other thing that I have gotten different opinions on is what's the right number of questions? Um, do people want a little snack? Do they want something that's a little more substantive? What do you think about that? Again, for my purposes, in a news contest, a knowledge test.
Yeah. Yeah, the general answer, and this is just stats from all the quizzes that have been made on our platform, just averaged out, like it's anywhere between 6 and 12 questions. Um, but the specific answer, and this is where, like I said at the beginning, like I think it's gotten so much harder to start a business now because everything has to be so unique and different for every audience, or
Yeah.
else people just refuse. They just say no. Like
Yeah.
they just won't engage at all, and that's not how it used to be. It used to be like you'd get some engagement if you were a little bit off. Now, if everything's not perfect, people are just like, nah, and they just don't touch it at all. And so it's
Hmm.
gotten really difficult because some audiences want every quiz to be 5 questions, and that's all they'll do. Other
Right.
ones think that your quiz is a bunch of junk unless it has 30. And it's really hard. Like you have to
Right.
have it exactly dialed in to the people who are coming to you, because people have gotten so addicted to everything being personalized exactly to what they want. If
Hmm.
they engage with something and it's not exactly what they want, they just turn their noses up and go away. And so it's, I do think it's gotten really hard. And especially like from where you're at, like trying to crack the code for the first time.
Yeah.
um it's just gotten so difficult because people are basically like binary at this point. Like it's ones and zeros, and if it's not exactly what I want, it's a zero. And
It's like either serve me exactly what I want or I'm out of here.
exactly,
I'm not
yeah,
going to try
and
you out.
no tryout, no engagement, no feedback. They're not going to tell you like, oh, it'd be better if it was like this. Nothing. Just completely uninterested or completely interested and nothing in between.
Okay, so that's a bummer. So I'm not usually like the upbeat one. I'm pretty pretty cynical and skeptical. I'm not in the habit of trying to make people feel better. I think most people who know me would say that, but I'll offer a different perspective about at least part of this. So I was, like I said, I was in corporate media for my whole career. That's more than 30 years as a journalist. Got laid off from Yahoo last year. It was fine. It was civil. I saw the strategy. I kind of saw what was happening. And as you know, I've been now about 4 months trying to make my own news operation. And in some respects, it's the best time ever to be doing what I'm doing specifically. And part of the reason is, so I'm doing it on Substack. There are other platforms, but I have put almost no effort into building a content management system because it's already there. And guess what? It's also free. So somebody has there's this infrastructure that has already done a lot of the work for me. And, I have my own personal website as well. And I've tried to set that's on Wix, and I've tried to set that up for publishing. And it's hard. I mean, it's technical and I can't do it myself on Wix. So I am very happily surprised by the Substack platform, and I'm not endorsing Substack. There are others. Patreon is another. I haven't tried it, but the one I chose. And you can also see that Substack is developing its own. It's becoming its own universe of content. There's a social network that's developing there. That is going to be a good alternative to Twitter, which is just a shit show at this point. Nobody has really come along to replace Twitter. And there, I don't think anybody will exactly become what Twitter used to be. But all this, like the tools that are there, I mean, I'm not sure I couldn't have done this 5 years ago. Not the way I'm doing it now. I would have. So what that enabled me to do as a journalist and a writer is, um, I left Yahoo in September, like the first week of September, and I was publishing much of the same material within 1 week because I basically had to spend no time building the publishing infrastructure, and artificial intelligence is helping me do stuff that I would otherwise be having to pay people to do. Now that tells you something about where work is going in America, but AI is going to benefit the innovators, for sure. So those are positives, and what all of that means is that I am actually, I know I've covered business for long enough that I know that one of the real barriers to people trying to start a small business is all the time they have to spend doing stuff that is not not the business, the administrative stuff, payroll, accounting. A lot of that stuff is a lot easier. So in my case, at least, I can just focus on the thing that I want. Most of my time, I'm able to focus on the thing I want the business to be.
No, I totally agree with
Like if
that. I think
like if that weren't the case, I wouldn't even be doing quizzes
right.
because it would be too far down it would be on the someday nice to do someday list, not, oh, I can actually get to this now.
No, I totally agree. And like, I mean, even the usability of our platform has increased so much in the last 5 years. And now you can use AI to write the content and then just move it in. And then now, like, we're building some AI into the platform. So it's just like you can get up and running. And you're totally right about like, you have to build a website and then get that all figured out. It takes 6 months or a year or whatever before you can even publish. And now you can be
Yeah,
up and running in a week. Totally agree with all that. It's definitely the easiest time ever to launch an online business. But like you said this earlier, and I totally agree with it. I think the puck has moved in terms of what's hard now. It's no longer hard to set up the infrastructure and like the bones of your business. What's hard now is how do you stand out?
yep.
And that's what I've
Differentiation for sure. Yeah,
yeah, and that's what I think that puts better words to what I keep harping on of why it's so hard to actually grow a profitable business now because this standing out piece is so hard. And like it's hard with written content, it's hard with quizzes, it's hard with it's hard with everything. I've never seen it this hard, and I think what you said just puts good words to it. It's like, well, it's super easy for anybody to get online and start publishing. So
yep.
now the competition is massive
Yeah, it's super
for
crowded. That's right. And for
yeah.
sure, so the fact that Substack is becoming, this place with tons of content, means there's tons of competition, and
Yep.
it's very hard to stand out. So you are right about that. But I'm happy to at least be at the point where I'm at.
No, I think it's great. And
I got to just focusing on the business a lot faster than I expected when I got started. So
yeah, and from my perspective, I'm super happy because like 10 years ago, I think, and I mean, I think you said this yourself, like 10 years ago, this is not something that you would have done because like all this
not like
setup stuff,
this. Yeah,
right? So I am super happy that you're in the game and there's a lot of people like you in the game where you're bringing all this really great research and experience that you have, and there's not this technical barrier because it used to be kind of like, oh well, if you know the technical stuff then you get to have a voice on the internet. And that was like a very siloed group of people
yeah.
where everything was not that interesting in terms of the content that ended up getting created. Like the content that you're writing, I think is exceptional. I read all of it. It's really interesting.
Oh,
And that's not how it was when it you had to know how to program to some level to
right.
even make a website, and adding a new blog post was a semi-technical feat. Now I think you get all these opinions and voices that are unlocked, which I think is excellent overall, and I'm super happy for. I think that what we've experienced at Interact in our platform and the frustration of it is like, well, now you have this whole wave of people that's like, how do I stand out?
Yeah.
And that I can't.
It's super hard. And I'll tell you one thing I know for a fact is having great content is not enough. You got to have great content. That's almost just the entry fee. You got to have great content and something else. And it's the something else that I'm working on. And you know what this reminds me of, Josh, is the bundling and unbundling of cable channels, which are
Mhm.
now streaming channels. So I actually covered the deregulation of the cable industry to some extent, which took place in the 1990s, and I forget all the details now, but there was some legislation that unlocked the power, kind of deregulated. And so what everybody knows is that over time, whether it's cable channels or streaming, we've gone from there's a package which is bundled, and then it unbundles, and that's what we have in streaming right now, right? It's pretty unbundled, and everybody's like, well, but actually I don't want 13 streaming subscriptions. Could somebody bundle this together? And I suspect that something, I think something like that might happen in the sphere I'm in. So I'm in the information business. Thank God it's digital, so my distribution costs are basically zero. Um, and I have a feeling that this is happening in information, and I wonder what's coming in the next 5 years. And of course, I want to position myself to be able to take advantage of whatever does happen in the next 5 years. But we've had a lot of unbundling in the media, so a lot of journalists, especially older ones who cost too much, have left their corporate overlords and gone, independent on Substack or someplace else. So that's the unbundling. I wonder if there's ever going to be a rebundling where some of this comes together. And I think it is happening in small ways, like um, podcast companies start out and they need, they so they're doing the podcast infrastructure, but they need content. Or anybody who's starting, Cheddar, that goes back a ways, but I knew some of the guys from Yahoo Finance who started Cheddar. They started a new thing, so they start a new platform. There's the platform, but they still need the content. So the content has to come from somewhere. And AI is going to transform all of this in ways that I'm sure I'm not thinking about. So part of what I'm trying to do here is be on the AI wave so I can see where it's headed and ride it. Who knows if it'll happen?
No, and I appreciate that perspective. And I also appreciate, I don't know if you would call this, but your humility in this, because when I was talking to people prior to the pandemic, I would say most people that would come in and were in your position were fragile. Like if something didn't work, then they didn't want to take a broader perspective and be like,
Yeah.
okay, well, what are the pieces? What's happening here? What can I do to make sure I'm in the stream of what's happening? It just became very personal, like, oh well, no one likes my stuff, so screw you, I'm not doing this anymore. Very
I wrote a
little
book about
resilience.
failure more than a decade ago. The book is called Rebounders, and it was one of the best learning projects. It didn't sell as well as I would have liked, but it's still available. But it was one of the best learning things I've ever done. Mainly, I interviewed people in business, music, sports, 13 or 14 or 15 profiles of people who failed on the way to success, and the failure was actually the thing that somehow opened the door for them to succeed. So I got inside their stories, and I've been living those stories ever since. And it's easy it's kind of a cliche, overnight success only takes 20 years. But you need to understand how to process failure or setback in order to make it work for you. And I've got Reed Hastings, the guy who started Netflix. He's one of the guys who gave me a great interview and told me about his background. And I will always remember um, how these guys took the learnings from a failure and turned it into success.
I completely agree with that, and I think you learn
How you
so
fail
much.
really matters.
Yeah,
Really
and
matters. You have to fail right.
you learn which direction to turn when something just doesn't work, if you're willing to look at it. And I think that's what I'm trying to point out, that I appreciate from you, is like you're willing to look at it. Most people, it doesn't work, they don't want to look at it, it's toxic, turn away, go a different direction.
Well,
But you
if that failure is telling you something,
yeah,
and it's not easy to figure out what it's telling you, but you have to learn how to listen to what the failure is telling you.
right. Yeah, and analyze it, right? Because like it's not obvious, like, oh, it didn't work, immediately you know what you need to do differently. You got to actually examine it and look at it
Right.
and pick it apart, which, if you're not even willing to look at it in the first place, how are you
Yep.
supposed to examine it and pick it
Yep.
apart? And so I think that your wave, if there are others like you in this wave, and I think there are, I've talked to a number of them, uh, will figure it out. They will figure out, because there was a huge extinction event during the pandemic, after the pandemic, of
Which
content.
one?
The content one, they were like 2022, 23, 24. A lot of content businesses disappeared because algorithm changes on Google, algorithm changes on YouTube, appetite of the audience, what people want, what they respond to,
Hmm.
all that changed very quickly. And so tens of thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of businesses where they use content to grow the business. So there's like a product on the back end. You got to have some way to make money, right? So like whatever you're selling is driven by content. So many of those went away. Now there's like this void. And I think it's cool to see people like yourself coming into it, because you're coming into it with a much more strategic, thoughtful approach of like, yes, I have all this experience and expertise, But no, it does not automatically mean that I will be successful and everyone will read my stuff and watch my content and take my quizzes. Like, I gotta be thoughtful about how this fits into where the world is at today.
Head on.
Yeah. Well, this is great, Rick. I appreciate your time. Super, super helpful conversation, I think.
Same to you, Josh.
Um,
And I do want to. I would seriously love to hear from people who, um, have ideas for how to use quizzes, how to really engage. The idea, what I'm trying to do is engage with people at a more personal level, and I need to hear people's ideas. So again, Rick at thepinpointpress.com. Tell me your
yeah.
idea.
And it's the pinpointpress.com for your content, right?
That's the website. Yep.
Yep. Awesome. Check it out.
You can
Rick's
subscribe for
writing is,
free. I should plug myself.
yeah, the Rick's writing is excellent. So check it out. Thanks,
Thank
Rick.
you. Great chat, Josh.